Picture this. A 21-year-old walks into a tournament as a wild card, ranked 35th in the world, with almost nobody outside the Philippines paying attention, and 2 weeks later half of tennis is trying to figure out how to say her name correctly. That is not a hook I am inventing for you. That is exactly what happened to Alex Eala in the summer of 2026, and by the time you finish this video, you are going to understand why players who have spent their entire careers near the top of the sport are suddenly talking about her like she is the most dangerous floater in the draw. Let's start where the story really turns, because everything before this point was promise, and everything after it was proof. Eala arrived at the Berlin Tennis Open in June as a wild card entry, which if you don't follow tennis closely just means the tournament handed her a spot she hadn't technically earned through ranking, a courtesy invite, the kind of thing that usually ends quietly in the first round. Instead, she walked onto the grass at a stadium named after Steffi Graf, one of the most decorated players who ever picked up a racket, and started knocking out seeded opponents one after another. First, she took down Donna Vekic, the reigning Queen's Club champion, in straight sets, which on its own would have been a nice line in a Filipino sports recap and nothing more. But then came the match that actually made people sit up. In the round of 16, she faced Elena Rybakina, the world number 2, a 2-time Grand Slam champion, and someone who had beaten Eala just weeks earlier at the Italian Open on clay. This was payback territory, and Rybakina made it look like the script was going to repeat itself, racing out to a 4-1 lead in the first set and looking every bit like the higher seed. And then something shifted. Eala capitalized on a couple of double faults to claw back a break, held her nerve, leveled the set, and eventually closed it out 7-5 before finishing the match 6-4 in under 2 hours. Afterwards, she admitted she was still shaking, that she'd been shaking on match point 2, which tells you this wasn't some cold, mechanical dismantling, this was a young player fighting through nerves in real time and finding a way through anyway. That win alone was her 5th career victory over a top 10 opponent. Most players never get 5 top 10 wins in their whole careers. She had 5 by 21, and she was just getting started in that tournament. The very next day she went back out and beat Alina Svitolina, the world number 8, 6-3, 6-4, a win that made it 6 top 10 victories on her resume and marked back-to-back wins over elite opponents in the same week, something she hadn't managed before. She told reporters afterward that facing that level of competition so often pushes you to your limits and forces you to show what you've actually got, and if you watch the way she played those 2 matches, you can see exactly what she meant. She wasn't surviving against Rybakina and Svitolina. She was solving them. Her run in Berlin eventually ended in the semifinals against Linda Noskova, but by then the story had already been written, because a wildcard entry ranked 35 in the world had just gone through 2 top 10 players back-to-back on a surface she wasn't even known for. Now here is where a lot of channels covering this story get lazy, because the easy narrative is just, she beat some good players, cool, moving on. But the numbers behind this run are what actually make it historic, and they are numbers you can check for yourself, not something somebody whispered to a reporter. Since 1990, across more than 3 decades of professional women's tennis, only 3 players in the entire sport have won more of their first 13 matches against top 10 opponents than Alex Eala has. Those 3 players are Martina Navratilova, Steffi Graf, and Monica Seles. Between them, those 3 women have won a combined 49 Grand Slam singles titles. That is not hype, that is not clickbait, that is a statistic that came directly from tournament and tour records, and it means that in the specific, brutal category of beating the best players in the world early in your career, Eala's start puts her in a room with 3 of the greatest to ever hold a racket. Let that sink in for a second, because it did not happen by accident and it did not happen in one lucky week. Before Berlin, Eala already had a top 10 win over Iga Swiatek at the Miami Open the year prior, when Swiatek was still ranked among the very best in the world, a result that had already turned heads in the sport. She followed that with wins over Coco Gauff at Indian Wells and Jasmine Paolini in Dubai, building this quiet, steady case that her run in Berlin wasn't a one-off, it was the acceleration of something that had already been building. And then Wimbledon happened. At the most famous tournament in tennis, on the biggest stage the sport has, Eala beat Iga Swiatek again, this time the defending champion, to reach the 4th round for the first time in her career, Another milestone for a player from a country that had never produced this kind of result on that surface or that stage. She eventually fell to Jasmine Paolini in the quarterfinals, but by then, nobody was talking about her as a surprising underdog anymore. She was simply a threat, the kind of name you did not want to see across the net regardless of what round it was. And then came Washington. If Berlin was the moment people started paying attention and Wimbledon was the moment she proved it wasn't a fluke, Washington in August was the moment she stopped being the story about potential and became the story about a rival. She went through a brutal draw at the Mubadala DC Open, beating Zheng Qinwen, the reigning Olympic champion, then avenging a previous loss to Leylah Fernandez, the defending champion at that event, then Alina Svitolina again, then Naomi Osaka in the semi-final, a four-time Grand Slam winner who has been at the top of this sport for the better part of a decade. That set up a final against Jessica Pegula, the world number 3, and it did not go smoothly at first. Pegula took the first set, rain delayed the match overnight, and Eala came back out the next day facing a real possibility of losing a final she had fought so hard to reach. Instead, she flipped the entire match, winning 10 of the final 13 games played, closing out the third set without dropping a single game, and completing one of the most complete comeback performances you will see in a WTA final. That win made her the first player from the Philippines to ever win a WTA Tour singles title in the entire Open era of tennis, a stretch of the sport going back over 5 decades. Think about that for a moment. An entire nation, an entire tennis history spanning generations, and it took until 2026 and a 21-year-old with a fighting spirit and a devastating return game to finally break through. The win also pushed her ranking into the top 20 for the first time, making her not just a history maker for her country but a legitimate, ranked threat on the WTA Tour at the highest level. And that Pegula win did something else too. It gave her a 9-4 career record against top 10 opponents, with 7 of those 9 wins coming in 2026 alone, which tells you this isn't some slow accumulation over years. This is a player who is peaking right now, in real time, in front of us. It is genuinely rare for a rise to be this fast and this visible. Most players who eventually crack the top of the sport do it gradually, a good result here, a disappointing loss there, incremental progress over several seasons before the breakthrough finally clicks. Eala's trajectory looks different. It looks like a compressed spring finally releasing all at once. And it hasn't gone unnoticed by the people who actually know what they're watching. Before her Canadian Open debut on center court, she picked up public praise from Rafael Nadal, one of the most decorated men to ever play the sport, along with Martina Navratilova herself and Andy Roddick, both of whom have seen every kind of young talent come through the tour over the decades and know the difference between a flash in the pan and someone who is going to stick around. American coach Rick Matchy, a man who has worked with Serena Williams, Venus Williams, Maria Sharapova, and Andy Roddick among others, all of whom eventually reached world number 1, publicly highlighted what makes Eala's game so effective, praising the cleanliness of her ball striking and suggesting she has what it takes to eventually reach the very top of the rankings. When someone with that kind of resume of developing champions starts talking about you in those terms, it means something, because that is not casual praise. That is someone who has literally built number 1 players from the ground up, recognizing the same traits in front of him again. So what actually makes her so dangerous right now? If you watch the matches back, a few things stand out immediately. Her return game is genuinely elite, the kind of weapon that neutralizes big servers before they can ever settle into a rhythm, which is exactly why she was able to take apart someone like Rybakina, whose serve is one of the most feared shots in the entire sport. She also has this composure under pressure that seems almost unusual for someone this early in a career, the kind of nerve that let her come back from 4-1 down against a 2-time major champion, or fight through an entire third set without dropping a game in a grand rain-interrupted final. And she has been remarkably durable on multiple surfaces, going 8-1 on grass in 2026 alone, a surface that plenty of experienced pros still struggle to fully adapt to, while also producing results on hard courts and clay throughout the same season. That kind of surface versatility this early is often the clearest signal that a player isn't a specialist who got hot in one particular environment, but a complete competitor capable of adjusting her game wherever she's asked to play it. There's also just the matter of temperament. Watch her post-match interviews and there's this recurring thread of genuine humility mixed with hunger, an athlete who seems fully aware of how remarkable her run has been while still talking about it like there's more work left to do, more levels left to reach. After the Rybakina, when she talked about still shaking on match point. After Svitolina, she talked about being in shock, about hoping she's still getting better. That's not false modesty, that reads like someone who is genuinely locating the edges of her own ability in real time and finding out those edges keep moving further out than she expected. So where does this go from here? That's the question everyone in the sport is asking right now, and honestly nobody has a certain answer, because tennis has seen brilliant breakout seasons before that didn't translate into sustained dominance. Injuries happen, other players adjust their game plans once they've been burned once, and the pressure of being the hunted rather than the hunter changes how a season unfolds. But what you can say with total confidence is that the foundation Eala has built this year is not built on luck. It's built on repeatable skills, a return game that travels well across surfaces, a competitive mentality that shows up in the biggest moments rather than shrinking from them, and a resume of wins against basically every elite player currently on tour, from Swiatek to Rybakina to Goff to Osaka to Pegula. That is not a fluke draw. That is a player systematically working her way through the entire top of the sport, one high-pressure match at a time. And when you place her start against the only historical company that compares, Navratilova, Graf, and Seles, three names that combine for 49 major titles between them, you start to understand why this isn't just a nice story out of the Philippines anymore. It's a story the entire tennis world is going to be following very closely heading into the next Grand Slam season. Because if the last few months are any indication of what's coming, Alex Eala isn't just arriving at the top of this, but she might already be there.